Alright, I'm going to be answering a couple questions about how to create a window, how to start an application in Eclipse, and I think it's about it. But I'm going to go over a couple things that I think you guys should know. First thing is this is the base class. Well, it has a couple extra things I added in some test panel just for a demonstration. But this should be basically how your class that's going to hold the main method should look. This is just a example of how you should set up your classes that are going to have the different pages. And feel free just to pause the video to copy this. One thing that I want to go over at start is going over the creating a project. So this is my project test. It's in the source. All the stuff is in the source file. And all your Java classes have to be within a package. So we could just go to new Java project. It'll ask you to put in a name. And then what you want to do is go under source, right click, and then just create a package. Again, just input your name and then you just create a new Java class under the package. So the next thing to go over is, okay, to run your application in Eclipse, all you have to do is make sure you click this start button. Now, if you have multiple projects like I do, you might have to select which class you're going to run, but since you probably only have one, just simply click this button and it'll start it up. This button is to put it into debug mode. You can still run your project in debug mode. It's just that you'll be able to like modify the code and see the changes almost right away. If not, if that doesn't work, just use the regular run, which is this one. To create a new window, you really don't need all of this. This just makes it work with the other thing. What you really just need is to extend the JFrame, set the size, and make sure you just get the content pane and set all these variables. That way at runtime, it'll create your window. So the set size sets the size of the window. So this is 600 pixels by 800 pixels. If you need it bigger or smaller, just change these numbers. And so here is the container. The class is actually a container. This is where you're going to put all of your different pages. So these JPanels, that's what these different pages are. They're just going to use a JPanel object. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to initiate it and set the layout to a card layout. The card layout, what it does is it basically creates a an array. Think of it as an array, and you just put a lot of different objects in. And how this card layout works is it's like a deck of cards. You can pull a card out, put it in front, and that's what's going to be shown. So that's how you're going to be able to change what's being shown on your window. So for example, I created two different pages. Both have just a simple button, but each button has a different text. So this one says I am something else, and this one says I am a button. So when I load it, it says I am something else. But when I click the button, it says I am button. So it actually just changed page right there. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to add each panel to the container and set like an ID for it. So you can put the number 1, you can put a string describing what it is, just anything to identify it. And then this window listener, it allows you to control what happens when the user clicks this X button. I always recommend doing this for like games or any projects where you need to save information before the whole application closes. So let's say you wanted to create a game and you want to make sure you save the progress, but the user just he clicks on the X button by accident, let's say. You don't want him to lose all the progress that he made, so when he closes it, you would put like a save right here before the system.exit. The system.exit 0 closes the application completely. Now let's say you didn't want to do this. All you would have to do is come down here, do the set default close operation. Just change this to like JFrame dot exit on close. Now you don't actually have to put the JFrame in front of it, but if you want to see what um, different ones you can use, like exit close or what I was using, do nothing on close, I would recommend putting the JFrame before it. That way you can see. And also, if you didn't want to do this window listener, you also obviously just remove this. This is what adds the window listener. Um, Also, this get content pane is the window itself. So you definitely want to add the container to this. That way everything shows up. Set visible and set resizable. Set visible true, otherwise whatever you put on the window will not be seen. And you could either put this to false or true, depending if you want the user to resize it. It's up to you. Excuse me. Okay. I have this instance right here, which is just a static instance of this class. The reason I have this here is so when you're on these when you're creating your different pages, see right here I have test button and I added action listener. This action listener just sits in the background waiting for you to click the button. And then when you click the button, it goes and calls this action performed method. And why I create an instance is so I can call the class, use that object to get this change page method, which I have down here. Excuse me. I mean, you could just put this as static change page, which you could do. I usually use an instance because most of the time I have some objects or variables here that I want to be able to access from a different class. So that's the only reason I do that. Otherwise, you can make this a static method. And so this method right here, change page, it takes in the string page, which is just going to be your ID. So like here, I put in demo2. That way I call this demo2 JPanel to be shown. So it just creates a new card layout object and gets the layout of the container, which is card layout. And then it sets it to show. Use the container and the page you want. So use this to change pages between, just use it to change pages on your application. And then of course your main method to run the whole thing. Then I'll go to the demo page. So the pages, they don't have to extend JFrame. They just have to you just have to make sure you use a JPanel. The JPanel is similar to JFrame as it holds different objects to be shown. Your grid bag constraints is what you use to add stuff to the grid bag layout. You don't have to use a grid bag layout. I just find it would be the easiest because, as I explained before, it creates a grid and you're able to put objects based on the grid. Now, each time you're gonna have to create a new constraint. Otherwise, you're gonna be just resetting the object to a different position. So if I wanted to create a new object, I would have to do constraints, if I can spell correctly. So you'd have to recreate the object, set the X, set the Y, set the insets. The insets are just like margins between objects. So you could change these to say to put like more margin on the left side, top side, bottom side, whatever. And then when you're done setting all that, you just add your object and your constraints to the panel. I mean, you could create a method. That way, you just call a method to do it. It might clean up the code a little. That way, it's not like a whole wall of just a bunch of constraints being remade. Um, the test button, like I said, this is the action listener. It listens for when the button's going to be clicked, and then it does whatever is inside of this action performed method. So you can basically put anything in here you want. And then this method, it just returns the JPanel. That way you can access it from your base class. Just make sure you create a new demo object, create a new page object. I know one thing that I noticed is when you start this, it says I am something else. I am something else is under my first page that I add. So keep in mind that the first panel you add to the container is what's going to be shown on startup. But once you can use buttons to switch. I just want to point out that whatever is added first will be shown. So I would recommend adding your home page first. That way there's no confusion on the user's part. What else? Oh, I know you might want to use a map to store objects, and a map takes into it has like two parameters. It can take string, boolean, integer. So if I wanted to put like integer string, and then we'll just call this test equals new. So there's two different ones you can use. There's a hash map and like a tree map. Each one does, it's just how it organizes it. The hash map just like adds them in order that they are done. It doesn't really care about any particular order. So this is the one I recommend. And what these integer and string do is if I wanted to add something to this um, map, you have to call the map and then it's dot put, and then you'll just put in the first parameter and the second parameter. And in order to get this string, so let's say you input this on one page but you need to receive it on the other, then you have to take the map and dot get, and it asks for the key. So what the key is the integer. And I am messing up on my typing. But okay, so the integer is the key. So this first parameter is the key, and this one is the value. So to get this value, you have to input the key, which is 1, 2, 3. Now, if you wanted to go through all of the map's contents without knowing the keys, what you could do is you're going to have to create a set, and it's of integer, because we're going to walk through the key. So key set test dot key set. So what this does is it creates an object of set that just holds all of the integers from this map. So all of the keys, which I put integers, it holds it. And then what you also going to need is an iterator. The iterator just goes through all of the values within the set. So just .iterator. Oh, and then one thing I need to mention is if you're writing stuff like map and you don't know what the import is, If you just write it out and hover over it, you'll see import iterator Java X Swing blah 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 blah, or import iterator Java util. Most of the time it's the first one, the first import, but make sure you read which import you're doing because it might not be the correct one. Most of the stuff you're going to work with here is going to be java.awt, java util, or java x.swing. And then when you have the iterator, you just has next. So it's, if you use the scanner, it's kind of similar to that when you're going through stuff. So iter.next or stuff like that. So that's map and storing stuff. So like, um, let's say you were doing the Jeopardy game, you wanted to store string, the questions. I'd use an integer string, and just the integer would be like 100 for 100 points or something like that. Or if you wanted to use a string, input like 100 and then category. That's something I would do, and then the string. Or if you were doing like or if you were doing like the coding and programming one, excuse me, where you have to hold um, like student objects and book objects and stuff like that. I would create your object class. So let's say you created it students. I would just put students here as your object and like an integer, like the ID of it, maybe. Um, Another thing I'm going to go over is you're probably going to be saving information. So in order to save information, like a text file, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to right click on text, create a new folder, call it res for stands for resources, and then you're going to have to come up here to test or whatever your class name is, come down to properties, and then you're going to want to go to the Java build path, go to libraries, and what you want to do is add class folder, select your class folder, click apply, or you can do apply and close. So what this does, it creates your like a reference library. This, if you don't do this, you're not going to really be able to use it correctly. This just makes sure that you have the file path configured into the whole project. When you're done with your um, project and you need to compile it into like a runnable jar, you're gonna have to go down to export. Oh wait, no, hold on. Yep, export Java runnable jar file. Next, you'll probably already have your configuration. Otherwise, just click on it. It goes to drop down your export destination. And then the library handling, you can either extract into a generator jar, package them into a generator jar, or create a subfolder. I would probably go with package, or package or extract. That way you don't have like a separate folder that's required in the same destination as the jar file. I think package would probably be the best one. You might have to experiment with both of these to see which one works the best. And then once you're done with that, just click finish. I think that's everything. That was all the questions. Yeah, so if you have any more questions and would like to see me do, just put the question in another video, let me know. Or if it's just like a simple single question maybe, I can try to answer it the best I can through email. Sorry for getting this video so late. If you couldn't tell during the video, I've kind of been feeling under the weather, and I've been kind of busy, so I do apologize. But anyways, I hope this helps, and please feel free to contact me if you have any other questions.